Hi guys. So the last few episodes have been somewhat large, and originally I wanted episodes to last like 20 minutes or less. So what I'm gonna do is that right from now on, videos are gonna cover a little bit less material to keep them a little bit shorter. So for this video, for this episode, I'm only gonna talk about something that we have been ignoring so far, even though we have seen it being used to some degree in previous episodes. But now I'm gonna talk about the syntax for importing. It's a very minor thing, but it's something that when writing Lux programs is gonna be used very often. So you might as well understand how it works, why it works the way it works, and you know. And it's very simple. There's not really that much stuff. So hopefully this will illuminate some of the things. So basically, as I mentioned in previous videos, um, code in Lux is divided into modules. A module is simply a file that contains Lux code. So this, for instance, this program.lux file is the program module. Now modules can be nested, which you do it by simply having a directory named something like, for instance, there is a file named lux.lux from which the Lux module comes from, but there is also a directory named Lux, and it contains another directory named control, which contains a module called monad. So the full name of the module will be something like, so will be this actually. And the same thing you get for all these other modules that I'm using here in this example. Now, when you import a module, you have to refer to everything within that module using the long name. So here we have, for instance, this int number structure. If you might remember the class about structure, which was the one previous to that, the previous video, we have this structure that comes from the number module, but this is not the full name. The full name is actually lux/data/number, and then the semicolon separating the name of a module from the name of a definition contained inside, and then the name of the definition itself. So this is the full name. However, when you import modules, you can give them aliases, which could be anything at all. So I give this module the alias of number. Now I could refer to it still using the long name, but of course it will be kind of uncomfortable. Now, the way you specify the syntax of importing modules has a lot of variety. So for instance, I can just specify the full name. So I could just do this instead of referring to this way, and it will work perfectly. But there are some advantages, of course, to using this syntax. Like for instance, if I have several modules that are all within the same directory, I don't have to refer to each with the full name, which will be annoying. And of course, you can have nesting up to as many levels as you want. Unlike, for instance, for those of you who are familiar with the Clojure programming language, you can only nest import statements one level in Clojure, which is kind of annoying because sometimes you have multiple levels of nesting. But in Lux, you don't have to. You can nest as much as you want. And for instance, well, doesn't matter. Anyhow, you can nest as much as you want. Now the way, and also by the way, you can combine the full syntax with the nested syntax you want. So I could have done this, Lux /monad, and it would have worked perfectly. I think in one of the videos I mistakenly used a module that doesn't exist for this version of Lux, which is 0.3.3, but exists for the 0.4 version that I'm working on, which is text format. And if you saw that video, I actually referred to the module like this. That's because that's the only thing inside the text directory, so using the nested syntax didn't feel like such a big thing for me. So the way you refer to a module in an import statement matters very much so. So if you refer to just the name, as in for instance this lux module here, or this monad module here, or the text module, well, not this is not just the name, this is actually within these brackets. But if you refer to something like this, or just the monad module, or IO here, something that looks like a leaf node in our import tree, but only has the name of the module itself, well, what's going to happen is that everything's going to be imported, and for every definition that got imported, you're gonna get an alias that will have no prefix. And that is why some of the things that I imported, for instance, like this log function here, which comes from the hack module. Sorry about the name. It's just maybe I'm gonna find some other name for that module. Hack doesn't sound really nice, but this log function that I got from the hack module, I don't have to prefix it because of the syntax. If you do the import with just the name of the module, everything is gonna be imported as if it was local, and it's really nice. But that's not the only way of importing, because for instance you might ask yourself, okay, well, what happens if I don't want to import everything flat? Because maybe you're importing two modules and they have definitions that have the same name, and you want to be able to differentiate one from the other. And by the way, in Lux, if you import two definitions from two different modules and they have the same name, you're actually going to get a compiler error, because the compiler is going to be like, hey, I'm importing two things with the same name. How are you going to know which is which? And you're going to get an error. So it's a nice way of avoiding, ambiguity in programs. It's a nice safety tool. So, what if I want to give a name to my module and or rather a prefix? What if I want to give a prefix to the definitions that I import instead of importing them flat? Well, there are two main ways, two main syntaxes, and they both do the same thing, but one is a bit shorter, which is why I created it. Initially I only had one, but it was the long one, and eventually I got tired of using it because I always had to repeat myself so much and all these keywords and stuff. So I came up with a shorter syntax. And under different videos you have seen both syntaxes being used, although maybe not necessarily to the full extent. But right now I'm gonna show you everything. So this is the flat syntax. This syntax is for the simplest case. You get everything imported flat on your module, which means no prefixes. So let's give things a prefix now. Well, I can simply do this. Bam, put it in parentheses, kind of like this. But instead of just giving it children node, as I do here, like for instance in this code data, I put this child node, which is IO. Instead of putting children node, what I do is this. For instance, if I want to give this a prefix, I use as, and then I give it a prefix. For instance, I'm going to refer to hack as h, which means that I will refer to the log function as h semicolon log. Very simple. Now, what if I want to refer to things within the module without prefix? Like I want to have a prefix for referring to certain things, but other functions might be, very commonly used. So I don't want to have to use a prefix to refer to them. Well, you can just refer them. And refer has three main ways of working. You can refer, well, actually I think it has four, but there's one that I never use, so. No, I think it only has three. Forget it. It has three. So I can refer all, which is basically, the same result. It will be like doing this, like just having the name and that's it. It will be like just importing hack in a flat way. But if I ever want to refer to something with a prefix, I also can do it using this alias prefix. So I can go both ways. Doesn't matter. Now I can also refer only some definitions like log. There is also this one. There are many others. I think there's error. You can just give it a list of what you only want to refer, the only things that you want to refer. And these ones, I can refer to them, I can use them without any prefix. Very simple. And I also have, I think it's called except or exclude, I don't remember properly. Let me see which was. Sorry about, this might look like I really know what I'm doing, but it's just, I never use that option, so. Basically, for some reason, a command that I tend to use on it. Parse inputs, where are you? Okay, here we go. And peripherals. Okay, it's called exclude. It was exclude. There we go. And I can say exclude, which means that everything within the module I will be able to refer to it without a prefix, except these ones. For these ones, I will need to use prefixes. Sorry about the little interim. And finally, there is another option for the syntax, and I can use open, and I can give it, I think it was the syntax, I haven't used it in a while, sorry, but I think the syntax was like, I give it a prefix, and then I give the name of a structure. So for instance here, I won't use open for this one because there are no structures in Hack, but I'm gonna be using this number structure again. So let's say that instead of using this syntax, I'm gonna be using this one as number open I can give it a prefix, and then I give it a list of structures that I might want. And with this, I can just open the structures and have them available to me with whatever prefix. Or I can give it an arbitrary prefix, whatever, whatever I want. Optionally, I think in this syntax, you don't need to necessarily give it a prefix, and if you just open with nothing, it's gonna work with the empty prefix, so nothing's gonna have a prefix. I don't remember well because I haven't used this syntax in a while, but I think that's how it worked. Now, as you can imagine, this is a little bit annoying because I have to write quite a lot, and for instance, like what happens when you only want to have a module and have the alias of the module be the simple name? Like I want to have the number I want to have the looks/data/number module have the number prefix. It's a very common thing. I do it a lot, and every time you open something, you have to use this long syntax, and every time you want to refer to something, you have to use this syntax that involves at least 2 keywords plus the things that you're actually trying to refer to, and the keywords are kind of long. I mean, this has 6 characters, including the hash. This one has 5 characters, including the hash, plus there are these parentheses. There's a lot to write. So I came up with a shorter syntax for doing the same things. So in the shorter syntax, it kind of works like this. Let's say I'm trying to do everything here, but with the shorter syntax. Well, with the shorter syntax, I use brackets instead of parentheses. Oh, and by the way, I forgot about something. Also, in this long syntax, you can also, besides having all these options, you can also add submodules. So, for instance, I could do something like, in the case of text, which is both a module and a directory, if I wanted to use a text format module, I could do something like, text as text format. So you can nest things also, besides having the options. That's in cases in which, for a module, you don't only have, you have both the file that contains the code, plus there's also a directory with the same name as the file, which contains other modules beneath that one. So, again, let's convert this number module import declaration into a short syntax. What will it look like? Well, I put in brackets, put the name of the module, and the thing is that it's going to take the short name of the module and use it as the alias itself. So you don't need to do something like explicitly alias it and give it a short name, because it's gonna do it automatically for you. Then, if I want to open the data structures that I'm taking here, I just give it the prefix, and put the data structures, and I'm done. Pretty simple, much shorter to write. Now with this syntax you can omit the parentheses. Sorry, not parentheses. You can omit the quotes, the quote signs. You can omit the double quotes because it already knows it's opening something just from this syntax, so it doesn't matter. But here, in order to know that you're opening something, you need to give it a prefix, and you can give multiple prefixes. Like you can give. I'm not gonna have any prefix for int number, but I'm gonna use this prefix for int show, and you can have these divisions of prefixes as much as you want. Which, by the way, you can also do with open, so you can do it on other side. Now, what happens with something like this? Like this hack module. What happens with this? Because here we actually have a prefix we actually have an alias that's not gonna match the short name of the module, unlike in number, and we're also referring to stuff. So we're not opening anything, but instead referring to stuff. How will this look like using the short syntax? Well, it's pretty simple. Here I have the name, and here I have the new alias as a string or as text, not as a symbol, which will be the case here. And there is a reason, and I'm going to show you why in a short while. But right now, the alias is as text over here. Here goes the name. So hack is going to be aliased as h, like before. And instead of doing refer only, I'm going to do this. Simple as that. Much shorter. From 6 plus 5, that's 11, plus the parentheses, that's 13. From 13 characters, we went to just 2. Much more efficient. If I wanted to do refer all, I will simply do this. Instead of a plus sign, I will use a star, an asterisk. And if I want to do exclude, I will just do minus. Very simple, much shorter. Now finally, I'm going to explain, why the prefix has to be as text instead of a symbol. And the reason is that you can use it, for instance, I have this practice that I like using. When I refer to modules that come from external libraries, I always use, short names that are kind of normal. But when I use modules that belong to my own code base, I like to put prefixes to be able to quickly identify what belongs to me and what belongs to foreign code. And for instance, I tend to use sigils a lot. So for instance, we have something like, this UI module, and I want to refer to submodules within it to build some higher level UI. And I might have something like import looks, and then my module path, bottom window form. And I'll say that within my UI module structure, I have these submodules. One specialist for buttons, another one for windows, another one for forms. Now you might look like this. You might think, well, wait, if they're all going to have they all seem to have the same alias. Isn't that problematic? I mean, how would you be able to distinguish between each module? And if you use semicolons in the alias syntax, that stands in for the full name for the short name of the module. So it will be, having this syntax will be as having this. It's the same thing, but the semicolon makes it relative, so you don't have to write it yourself every time, which is really convenient. So I use it for things like adding prefixes and suffixes to the names of my model. So I could have anything. I could have, it could be my button module, and this is actually gonna be transformed into this, and this is actually gonna be the prefix, which of course is kind of silly, but I'm trying to illustrate that whenever you use this semicolon syntax, it just means it just serves as a stand-in for the short name of the module, so you can refer to it within the new alias that you're generating. And finally, I want to show you something interesting. You might see here that I'm referring to this module, in the long name. Let's say that this is a path in my file system up to where the files are, but this is kind of annoying. So one last thing that looks over is the capacity to use relative paths. So let's say that my module is called my app UI, and this will be my app UI, and let's say that it's a file named my app UI.looks, and there is also a directory named my app UI in which I have these submodules, where I could refer to this just like this, kind of like relative syntax for files, which is great because that means if I ever change the name of my module of my app UI, I don't have to worry about changing the paths in my import statements because they're all relative. I change the name of the directory and the name of the my app UI.looks file, and I don't have to worry about changing the imports because they're always going to be synchronized. And I can also refer to my parent, right? So I could do something like, for instance, an equivalent to this that will be a little bit less efficient will be, with the double dots, I go to my app, then I go back to UI, and then I refer to these things. So this syntax basically, this short syntax basically is great for referring to modules that live on your same level, like modules that are not your children, but rather like your siblings. And this single dot syntax is great for referring to children modules, and it's really convenient. You can use it for the short syntax of module imports and also for the long syntax of module imports. So you can use it wherever you want. It has nothing to do with this bracket syntax or the parenthesis syntax. It is independent, and it's really nice, really convenient. So this is a video for today. Hopefully now you understand how module imports work and how to make the most out of them. They're pretty easy. They're not hard in the slightest, and this is all the syntax there is. So if you understand this, you're good to go. So my next video is gonna talk about macros finally. So see you there.